Sounds like a plan.
What's going on? We should be good. Let's just do, yep. All right, Emily.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good. It's another Monday, starting off the week strong, getting ready for our own Applied AI events, thinking about that conference later on.
Yep. Lots going on.
Oh yeah.
What's going on?
How are you?
Yeah. I am running out of time. That's what I am right now. I need today to be, I don't need anything to go wrong today. I need to get it all the things out the door to all the peoples. Otherwise, I'm in big shit. But anyways,
I believe in it. It can be done. It can be done.
It can be. I'm waiting on some designs to get finalized and some logos to get done, and just I spent all weekend in spreadsheets and numbers, and that's the tedious stuff that that sucks up your mental like bandwidth to really have anything else to do, right? It's like the dumbest work. Like there's nothing special about it. You're just flinging rows from one spreadsheet to the next and counting and double counting. And at the end of the day, you're like, I don't know what happened to my brain.
Right. It takes so long just to arrange the spreadsheets. Do you use any AI tools for your spreadsheet work? I mean, working at the AI org, I always have to ask people if they're using the robots to do the hard, meaningless work.
So I'm going to blow your mind. So okay. I am a huge Google Apps person.
Okay.
And to the point of, in Google Apps, they have something called App Scripts, and App Scripts is like the thing behind a Google Sheet. So you can make your own menus and you can use some JavaScript and you can write code. And so you can manipulate the sheet. We query our APIs. So like if I need to get the orders that have happened, so I want to get t-shirt sizes or how many registrations there are, whatever. We have custom spreadsheets that have menus that can go and do that and interact with the API. And so simple things like tally, I mean, doing what you could do with spreadsheets, you could do all kinds of really good stuff, filtering, sorting, looking. And then they have something called Looker, and Looker is like graphing over your spreadsheet. So your spreadsheet's basically a data source. So we can look at that from that angle to get kind of visually get numbers and whatnot. So do I use any AI? No, because I don't know what AI would bring to the table in this case.
Yeah, sounds like you've already got other kinds of robots helping you do the work.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of places. There are places where I think that we could, I know that we could leverage AI to do more stuff. And it's kind of a slow burn of like trying to see practical things. Like we use it in the case of if we want to do like bulk creation of social media posts based upon like short descriptions of sessions. We call the ChatGPT's API, get it to generate, kind of riff off that, format it, sort it, kind of do all of that because we're kind of going from one to the next. But in the case of us like the mechanics of the planning and the numbers and all that.
Yeah.
It's like we just have code that's like manipulating data. So it's like pull data in and put data in other format for vendor or for order, like double check against historical averages. You know, are we too far off the lot? But I'm all ears. Like if you tell me like, hey, homie, like you're missing the boat, ChatGPT could plan your entire event, I'd be like, sign me
Yeah.
up.
Well, yeah. And see, I personally don't use it for reports as much, mostly because I don't do as much with the report building in my role at the organization. But I do know that you can build reports in ChatGPT. There's been some update where you can pretty much tell it like, hey, I need a pivot table. But instead of saying pivot table, if you don't know the term pivot table, you'll describe to it, I need these columns and this kind of data and set it up this way. And chat will go, oh, okay, here you go. Here's your pivot table. And you can rearrange rows and data really kind of natively. You don't have to know any of the formulas. But no, writing, like what you said, is what I use it a lot for.
Now, what I will say is the days of me like writing my own app script to do a thing, that has been replaced by AI. So one of the things I did yesterday is I've got, we have emails to send and some emails have bounced. So, and these come from our APIs. So
Yeah.
API comes in the spreadsheet. I get a list of the bounced emails because we live in that world where people are getting fired and whatever. But I don't want to send them back out on that bounced email. So we have a menu, and that menu can like take in the other input and then filter the list down. And instead of me like writing all that code to do that behind the spreadsheet, I went to the AIs and said, hey, I need to do this sheet, this column, dedupe, remove, blah, 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 format this, bold it, put an X next to it, whatever. Prints out, big old thing. I look at big old thing and go, Robot's got it pretty close. Like, no, you used the wrong column. We actually want to change this map and whatnot. And next thing you know, it pumps out. And I'm like, cool, copy code, put code, tweak a little bit. And the next thing you know, I've got a custom menu. And instead of it taking a couple hours, it only took me 10 minutes. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like
that's the awesome part. And that's what you said there, is you catching kind of where it will miss a column or it'll put something wrong. At Applied AI, we tell people that kind of thing all the time, because we always get asked the question of like, is AI going to take my job? Is AI taking over? Is it going to do everything? And we say, no, people who know how to use AI are probably going to take your job because they can automate it and use it for efficiency. But it's going to do things like put a column in the wrong place. And if somebody who didn't know to look for that column wasn't checking it, well, now you've just sent out an incorrect report. You've got your data wrong, all, XYZ down the list. But for when it does help, it really does give you a big boost.
Yeah. And I like getting it to a buddy. So I have a partner who I can program with or whatever, right? Riff ideas off of a blank page syndrome. I got to get started. Like, just give me something so that I can go right. And slowly, like, I'm trying to, I don't want to say embrace, because I'm already good with it. It's more of like, I'm trying to pull it into more of my daily life where I like rewiring my daily process. So for example, it was late the other night. Some shit wasn't working. I'm trying to get this thing done. I'm trying to get it out the door. I cannot figure out why it was not working. For the life of me. And that's one of those places where it's like, you've been working too long. It's time to go to bed. It's 10 o'clock at night. What are you doing? You can't see it. And so on the off chance, I was like, hey, AI, This event handler is not working. I do not see it coming through. Whatever. Explain the situation. And it was like, hey, dumbass, you named it wrong. It was like, you didn't put I gave an ID instead of a type. It's like, you've got the wrong attribute on the form element. And I was like, you dumbass.
Right?
Like, of course.
Of course.
Of course.
And that's what it's great for. See, AI is good at those things. And the blank page syndrome you mentioned, that is what I tell people is my favorite usage for it. And I tell them so often is that I actually figure out what I don't want so much faster with AI and with kind of pair programming it. Because I'll tell it, hey, I'm writing a social media post, I'm advertising this, I want XYZ tone, I want it to be this long. And it will give me some, AI written. Sometimes it's kind of good. A lot of times it's garbage, and I can tell a robot just use predictive analytics to put some nice words together. But in that process of kind of going like, oh no, you're wrong. I didn't want those things, but you were right here. It's awesome. And so, I also use it for proofreading. Can't tell you how many times it's done similar to me what it did for you, where I use the same word too many times in a row, or I flip my words and I'll be like, hey, chat, why is this just not sounding right? Why doesn't it look right? And it's like, well, you've used the same word 3 times within, 10 words of each other. Is that maybe what's wrong?
I have a love affair with Grammarly.
Really?
There are a few tools that I will pay for to the day I die. Grammarly is one of those. Sunsama is one of those. Superhuman has now become one of those. I cannot live my life without Grammarly. I have become such a better writer by having a tool that sits there and is like, hey, homie, you don't understand grammar, or there's a better way to phrase this. Or like you said, you used this word for 5 times in this sentence. You're an idiot. And it's so good. And I know Google and whatnot, they're getting some of that into their place, but I couldn't live without that thing. I would feel naked out in a public theater without it. Like, that is just, I just have to have it.
Some Ross person in the comments says some of your words truly come from Grammarly, which it's funny to me because, so I downloaded Grammarly actually not that long ago. I want to say it's been about a month since I've had Grammarly. And so now literature was a big part of my academic background and my degree. And so I never used Grammarly in school because I did all my own writing, and it was my favorite part. And I have grown to hate Grammarly so much. And I wonder if it's because I only have the free version, because I get the little green Grammarly bubble on my screen that will flash and say like, hey, do you want to rephrase this? But one, it moves everywhere on my screen. Like, I don't know what setting I have to turn off in there, but it will just put itself right where I'm trying to write. And that's annoying. But I don't like its suggestions a lot. And often it'll hover over there and it will be like, hey, look at this suggestion. And I'll look and it will say, oh, you ran out of your 5 free samples today. Please upgrade. And so I don't know. Maybe I need to pay for it.
So I pay for it. I will also admit I have the AI piece turned off. So there is an AI like writing assistant. So no Ross, not all of the words are from Grammarly. It just makes me put a coherent sentence together. We're so off topic, but I love it. The tools trying to get your attention at the cursor. So your little
Yeah.
point about the green bubble kind of being there all over the
Mhm.
place. I am personally, I'm getting really mad at that.
Yeah, me too,
Because I
because it's
don't,
annoying.
it is. And I've given Grammarly permission, but more and more tools are trying to get at their cursor and the context at the cursor, especially like an IDE or something. And I'm like, get the fuck out. I didn't want you here. I didn't ask you to be here. I find you distracting here. And I've bounced a number of tools out of my life because of we're going to get right in your face with like every keystroke of thing. Now Grammarly's gotten a little bit better. They let you kind of move things around, but there's times where I'm like, even you got to go. Like
Yeah.
you're disrupting the flow by like jumping in here and just not letting me letting me get to a place to where I can then invite you in and we can riff together.
Mhm.
But
Yeah. So I didn't realize that you could turn the AI off in Grammarly. So
yeah,
I'm
there's
gonna have to go look into that and see if it improves my experience. Because yeah, it doesn't jive with me quite right. But so many people like yourself
yeah,
and
I
here in
couldn't
my circle love it. Like
do it.
Justin at Applied AI, he uses Grammarly for everything too. And so I feel
Like
like I'm missing out on something.
I will be in an email and the suggestion on a paragraph would be you should make this more succinct
Yeah.
as to what your ask is. And I'm like, you're right. You're right. I'm beating around the bush. Like, just get to it.
Yeah.
Anyways, we met a couple of weeks ago or kind of formally met a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
We were chatting about community.
Mhm.
I was expressing some of my feelings about how I feel like the community is in a weird place and it's dying and it needs work. And there's a lot of like drift in workplaces and relationships that are drifting. And then you just started like flowing all these words that I was like, you and I are on the same page. And then I just kind of abruptly cut you off and said, listen, let's take this conversation to the online so that we could
Yeah.
dive into it more, because um, you were really articulating some of what was going on in my head that I haven't been able to articulate. So I'm going to try to recreate that
Awesome.
scenario so that we can get back there.
Yeah. I'm here for
And
it. I love articulation. So anytime I can help articulate, which is part of what I love in community building, which is what we were talking about, is community in a sense is its own group therapy in a way sometimes, in that sometimes you have a thought and you just can't get it out quite right, and then somebody says something unrelated and you're like, that's it, that's what I've been trying to say for weeks and
yeah,
I can't get it out.
yeah. And I think I'll start with the fact that I'm seeing a couple trends that scare me. And
Mm.
I'm just going to say in the upper Midwest, you could take the very obvious ones, which are user groups have shut down, code camps have shut down, the corporate culture is different. I'm not getting into whether remote work is good or bad or whatever. I believe there's a different way to work than what we're doing today. But the reality is, like, we're humans and humans need interaction and humans need other humans and humans need connection. And I'm seeing the deterioration of these things to some degree. And some would argue we don't necessarily need it, and others, I don't need friends at work, and that's not really what I'm trying to be a proponent of. But we do need relationships that are, solid, built on trust and safety, um, and when we're at home, right, we're losing a lot of these connections throughout. And I think one of the things that has always made tech pretty special is the fact that there's corporate motive, and then there's a whole bunch of people who don't have corporate motive.
Yeah.
And the two things, I don't see I don't really see that in other industries, right? When we refer to a community in tech, for the most part, people understand that those are individuals who have the good of the workers. I don't know a better word for it. Good of the people at their kind of best interest versus a company who has the good of its profit or its product or services kind of at the forefront of its things. Sometimes those get a little blurred, but there's this ecosystem of people who are trying to see others grow, and through that comes a lot of innovation and things like that. We've had this proliferation of online content. That's all great. But the reality is, as we were talking a few streams ago, it creates this parasocial relationship with folks, which leads down a whole nother path. I guess all to say, I'm looking around and I'm seeing relationships deteriorating, the community deteriorating, and I worry what's to come in the years to come, as to we're going to look back and go, jobs were lost of that, innovation was lost as a result of that. Should we have done? So I'm just going to pause there because I just vomited a lot of words.
That's okay. I enjoy a good word vomit. It was a big part of all of my Socratic seminars in school. And so I think this is actually pretty similar to what got me to say something that really intrigued you last time, which is that I feel like you're getting it with the deterioration in a way that things are really shifting a lot with communities right now. But I think rather than deteriorating, because I think they're still
It's a harsh
there.
word. Oh yeah, that's a harsh word.
Yeah, and there's still a yearn in people. Like people are still yearning, but what's deteriorating is the definition of what that looks like for them. And so I think I mentioned last time we were talking that I studied a lot to do with technological shifts in society and how we've responded to that historically. But something that's really interesting about where we are right now is the shift with AI and just everything that happens with AI, all of the change that comes with it, is also coming on the back of a pandemic. And that pandemic is the first one in a long time. And so you have these two major societal shifts at the same time, which historically are truly a once in a lifetime type of shift. You have the pandemic, which has caused people to entirely redefine how they're engaging with community. You have the year of lockdown with people at home, which forces them to, make a lot of choices about when, where, how, who they're going to go out and see. And that caused a lot of change with how people want to go out and engage with things. And then so right on the tail end of that, after we've gotten through, the big peak of the pandemic, we've gotten through the apex of a lockdown. Once we're starting to get back out into, return to work orders and people not wanting to be as remote anymore because they don't want to be at home as much. Now you have a technological shift that enters the picture and completely redefines people's work, on top of having just had it redefined in terms of remote, hybrid, in-office work. And so with that, you're going to get a lot of fear. You're going to get a lot of is AI going to take my job questions? Okay, if AI is not taking my job, but somebody who knows AI is taking my job, how do I be the person who knows AI? And those kinds of fears can cause a lot of shift in culture, in just any kind of organization. And so I often think about the change management community members that applied AI, because there's quite a lot of them. And something that they all seem to have a common theme about is they return to the human element. I've seen titles for sessions with things that are the human factor, the human side, human nature, keeping things human. there's this long thread that's been running for the last year or so around human and just how do we reconnect as humans. And I think that's where we're seeing kind of the redefinition happening is so much has been online and so much has been event based in the past. But even at an event like that conference, how do I go to that and how do I keep it really human? How do I know a new person there? How do I get to know the speaker who just spoke on something I want to know more of? And I think that also tilts into workplace culture in and of itself. But now I'll pause because I'll
Yeah.
let you banter off that because I told you I can riff on this stuff all day long. But ultimately, I think it's a bunch of different facets of culture all getting redefined at the same time.
Yeah, I like the redefining or the redefinition of community. I like the redefinition of culture as it exists. Me saying deteriorating is certainly a hard word, and I can go there and I see the numbers and the the email list changing because people lost their job, whatever the case.
Yeah.
But the human piece, which is why I got in all this shit in the first place, the irony of it. And let's see, I'm 14 years in with that conference. I'm probably 20 years into just doing events and community-based work. And never, ever have I felt like the human piece was more important than it is today.
Yeah.
I also feel like the human piece is the hardest that it's ever been. And your point about kind of the relationship piece, this is a thing that I'm trying to, I don't want to say teach, but you may see future Clark, speaking much more about how do we create these relationships in tech. Because what I'm seeing is people who literally have forgot how to meet people. And so that's creating a place where then we are not getting back out, or we don't know how to go in the workplace and meet somebody because they just don't know. Or you have a culture who has, I don't know how prevalent this is, but if you had a group of people, and I think it was you and I that were talking about this, if you have a group of people who have been together kind of before the pandemic and they have kind of the old stories, and then you have somebody who joined a company during said pandemic or after you've gone remote, what's the culture, right? Like how do you and I, who have maybe never met in person, and yet all these other people have the lunchtime stories and whatnot, like how do we forge a relationship that is of equal weight? I don't know, of equal depth. Depth is probably a better thing. And I'm worried that if the relationships don't get effort put into them, because it's going to be harder online, then what happens to the culture of the workplace is it becomes order takers, right? Like you're literally just clicking off tasks out of a I can't even remember our task tool now. ClickUp, whatever. And like you have no emotional anything to it.
There's no tie there. And that
right. And then where does innovation come? You're just like, fuck it. I just did my thing. I pushed the PR through. I'm done. I'm out. Right. And I don't think that's good for anybody.
It's not. And I think there's a lot of growing demand for change there. And so something I may or may not have mentioned last time that we're talking is one of the things that really fascinates me with current workplace culture is one, just how much it's changing in general. But ultimately, a big part of what's pushing ahead a lot of deep cultural change is Gen Z and Gen Z's interaction with Gen X and older and millennials and older generations in the workplace. And that's because Gen Z is just so starkly different than the other ones. They have been raised in a native digital state that's just, there are so many similarities, but so many differences at the same time. And so having this younger workforce come in right when workplaces are already battling with the remote shift from the pandemic and skill shifts with AI, you're seeing something interesting. So something that I hear millennials or Gen X make comments more about Gen Z is that Gen Z is lacking that kind of that human connection you were talking about. Like, how do I go start a conversation in person? We're great at it online, amazing at sending a tweet to somebody and starting a conversation. But having these young 20-somethings who aren't used to, say, water cooler talk and just striking a conversation at the coffee pot, it's a lot harder for them to get those conversations going. And then that's been compounded by the fact that you took the people who lead these types of culture and you put them remote. And so now we're all collectively used to starting our conversations digitally and engaging digitally, but we're yearning for the in-person connection again. And so I think the way that we really start stoking those flames again is by having places like that or applied AI for people to come to with people who are going to facilitate a connection. Because, I've been to events where the facilitation is, you're all here in this room, go say hi to somebody. And that does something to get folks in a room, but there's no icebreaker there to say, there's nothing to say, you folks in corner A all share this common interest. Here's a question for an icebreaker. I think that's really where we need to move more towards. And I think as we start to see those conversations open up, you'll see more of that natural sharing around what's happening in community, what's happening in culture, what different perspectives are based on different backgrounds. And I think that's going to be a big part of workplace change.
So you mentioned Gen Z.
Yeah.
So I made a couple of those. So I think the Gen Z thing is interesting because in part because they're kids of Gen X.
Yeah.
And I think that my generation, and I'm now old. So yes, Ben, we got called old.
Hey, most of my network is Gen X. So, said with adoration.
It is called the fuck around and find out generation. Like we have some strong opinions, and we're kind of coming into the limelight as our parents, pass on. But I also think there's a stark difference between how we raised our kids versus how millennials got raised. And so I'm seeing things from the Gen Z crowd of my children and whatnot, which is more again, they're my kids, so I would have to expect they're kind of more, I don't want to say in alignment, but they think like we do. Obviously, the apple fell really close to the tree.
Yeah.
But you're seeing with what's going on online, them going, this is bullshit. I don't want to deal with it. And you're right. They are the generation that I don't want to say always had a phone in their hand, but touch screens were, that's all they ever knew, right? Like
it's always been there. I can't tell you how many TikToks I've seen of a kid going, what did you do before you could Google an answer? Or what did you do before you had Google Maps? And somebody only, 30 being like, well, it's not that long ago that life was before then.
Right. Yeah. Things have moved pretty fast.
Yeah.
But it I'm more fascinated to see how Gen Z changes things than I was about millennials. And I never really
Yeah.
thought about generational stuff until like recently with the pandemic and what those have been through. You know, how many kids can really say they had to study at home.
Yeah.
Right? They had to go figure out how to study differently. It's fascinating to me. I think it does underscore the point of we are in other pandemics of how to create relationships, on how to integrate with people better, both in person and online. And I'll say, and with the robots. Like,
Yeah.
what
And with
what
the
does that
robots.
what does that really mean? Because there's this inherent trust that, and I'm guilty of it, right? Go to AI, ask a thing, and in some cases, blindly take it because seems more succinct and on point than having to bounce around Google and search around, right? You're like, yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. And in the world we live today, where you don't trust your politicians, you don't trust the healthcare system, you don't trust this, the robot feels like a safer answer. Now, algorithmically, right, it can drive you to something that makes you feel comfortable because it's been sitting there watching you.
I was
But
just gonna say it's a total double-edged sword there because it
totally,
does feel comfortable and it knows how you want to receive that information. And so it gives you exactly what you're looking for. It makes me think of one of the first classes I took in my degree was a study of technology from the before writing existed and thinking about writing as a technology all the way through to currently today. And one of the things that really opened my eyes in that class is echo chambers online and how everything you see on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Google, everything that you see is your echo chamber that you have built, and that somewhere there is a data center, well, not a whole center, but part of the data center is devoted just to you and
yep,
just to making sure you get exactly what you're looking for.
yep,
And I wonder if that's where part of what we're starting to feel in community building is a similar friction, in that digitally it is so micro segmented at this point. Like you can
yes,
really get down to the nitty gritty on Emily versus Clark, A
yep,
versus B. They're getting two completely separate packages.
yep,
But us in person, we can't do that. And if I did do that, like if I could come to you and say, here is a perfect hand delivered package of everything you want, Clark, this is everything you want at an event, you'd probably go, that's kind of creepy. Why do you know so much about me and what I want? But we kind of want that type of similarity. Like we want something hyper personalized, but where does that line exist in person and with community building?
yeah. You really, I forget. I can't recall the word you said. Micro.
Micro segmentation.
Yes, and that's the thing. Um, I've been screaming with different words that
Yeah.
micro segmentation has created huge echo chambers.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of reason. It's not part of reason. Part of the reason we have a um, polyglot conference as it sits is to get you out of an echo chamber, right? Which is your daily
Yeah.
workplace, your daily tech stack, to go see something else so that your
Mm-hmm.
eyes could be open to what else is going on. It's the reason we have it in the middle of nowhere, because it forces you to leave your echo chamber,
Yeah.
right? It's forcing you into a different place. Like it's fucking intentional. And people I don't know that, not that I'm looking for credit for it, but like part of the design of why we have it where we have it is to get out of the echo chamber, right? That's part of
Yeah.
our responsibility, is to get you to think different. I stand on stage and say, don't go to what you know, because echo chamber. And then today, it's like all anybody wants is the fucking echo chamber. Like they want niche ass things, niche down real hard, because the boss feels better about buying the thing because it's aligned to the thing, right? So you're like, I'm going to go get 92 units of this because I'm just trying to make a goofy measurement, but 92 units of React at this thing for $1,000, which boss then says, okay, you're going to be so much more educated and bring that back to the team. When the reality is those 92 things you probably could have got online without ever going anywhere.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get to, behind in that thing to get to those people to say, get the fuck out, right? Like go see other things. And that's because everybody's got a Discord, everybody's got a Slack, there's 1,000 everybody's got. And I don't know, maybe the great defragmentation one day will come. But I worry that just, I guess it's an opportunity for us to continue to do better and try to teach and make awareness. But I'm reminded of the fact that, we focus a lot on technical skills, and the reality is now more than ever, there's a lot of social, personal, relationship, communication that people just don't have. And, it's, I think a lot of people are going to have troubles with it.
Yeah, soft skills are so much more needed, and it's a really interesting shift. So like, for instance, one of my favorite little bits to riff on is in 2018, when I signed up for about as deep of a humanities degree as you could get, one based in cultural studies and comparative literature and critical theory, everybody looked at me like I had 3 heads, and they were like, what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do in the future with a humanities degree? And at the time, I wanted to work in academia. I just wanted to be a professor. I wanted to teach people. And so that was a fine answer to say, well, I'm just going to do more of the humanities. And now, in the midst of AI, humanities degrees are what are being called for the most, because of what you just called out, is that lack of social and soft skills. And in the humanities, you are encouraged to dive deep in the areas in which are igniting your curiosity and are areas you want to specialize in. But ultimately, what is paramount in a degree like I did or any other liberal arts degree is going to be things like adaptability and flexibility, being able to read for different tones and audiences and being able to adjust that. And so, like, I just delivered a presentation last week to a group of interns at the U of M, and I made a huge part of it about how to embrace emerging technologies through skills. And I told them I wanted to do that because this is going to be something that's going to follow young people. I don't see AI being a sole type of technological shift. I think it's the tip of the iceberg. I think we're due for many more similar type of technological advancements. And so for young people, advising them as you move in the future, how the heck do you stay to date? I told them, you stay adaptable, you stay flexible, you stay a lifelong learner. You continue going to professional networks and communities. You continue trying to take part of open source projects, because these are the things that make your skills transferable. They make you able to adapt to a new position, a new technology, a new environment. And ultimately, that is so much more valuable than learning something like prompt engineering to a T. Because in 2 years, everybody's going to have prompt engineering on their resume, So yeah, I'm with you. I will shout from the rooftops as much as I can for anything related to social and soft skills and anything related to media literacy. media literacy is really interesting in how it's evolving.
So you're involved in community building and whatnot. I mean, I have this decade plus struggle with soft skills. They are the thing that they are the one topic that everybody comes to me and will tell me that it has changed their life, right? So somebody will come up to me, guaranteed, at this upcoming that conference, and they'll say, I went to something that was soft in nature, and they will say, my eyes were so opened, or whatever, some point of enlightenment will happen, and that they're really thankful that I had it.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I will have somebody who will say, you had too much soft skills stuff. I didn't get enough technically, which is the irony is I know the numbers and what we've picked and the balance of things. So it's just that it's not a factual statement by any stretch. But getting people to invest in themselves, and I'm going, it's very obvious to invest in yourself from a technical place because the output is very easily measured. You can say, oh, I know how to now create a component in React. Bing, check mark, done. When you invest in yourself, the result and the other end may be more questions than you have answers for, right? That piece of enlightenment just gets deeper and deeper. And I mean, I've been doing this now for almost a decade on myself. We ain't got to the end yet. So
let me know if you ever do.
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think it's, I mean, I will, but I'll be dead. But trying to convince people that I'll say they matter and they need to invest in them. It's my greatest struggle.
Yeah. And that's where I'm hoping that especially with the big Gen Z push, that I think workplace culture in its redefinition could really start pushing this agenda forward. Because one of the things I saw it so aptly put yesterday is that it was somebody, I want to say it was a Gen Xer, who was commenting on Gen Z's entry to the workplace and the amount of change they've seen. It was somebody in an enterprise type corporation. And they talked about how their Gen Z workforce is calling for much better treatment and a lot more than they ever got when they were at the bottom of the totem pole. And that person said, it's easy on the Gen X side to say, well, we never got that, so why should you get it? But really, they never knew that they could get better. There was no TikTok and Twitter and Instagram where everybody was sharing everything about their day and their workplace and what they go through. And conversely, you have access to all of the generations above you sharing that same information about their company, about their journey, about what they get, about, there might be people out there talking about their pay raises, their benefits, what they get on the end. And so Gen Z is coming in and saying, hey, I want better for myself because I know I deserve better. And I know that you on the corporation side are capable of giving me better. You just think I'm young and don't know all of these things, so I'm not going to ask for it. And so I'm hoping that this kind of push and pull that's happening with Gen Z causes a bit of a redefinition in the workplace and causes a workplace to say something like, you know what, you're right, and we should do more for our workplace culture, and we should invest more in you as people. And if we can start getting those conversations at work of we are more than a part of the machine making something happen, we are whole people who deserve a whole culture in our workplace, maybe that will really help start to inspire, okay, I know I can get technical skills at work because that's my job. Where do I get the soft skills? Where do I get learning and development credits and spend money from my job to buy a ticket to that conference and develop my soft skills.
And you come right back to where we started, which was if you don't know how to create those relationships and get integrated to do that, right, that culture starts to fall down
Yeah.
or it drifts. And I've always been a proponent of like transparency in the workplace. And I was, like the cast of Friends, they all shared their salary and they all leveled up because they did that.
Yeah.
But at the same token, like I'm also very hypersensitive to entitlement. And there is a piece of like, you have to fucking earn it. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of, I have imposter syndrome when it should be like, no, you're an imposter. Like you actually haven't done it yet and therefore don't deserve. And that's okay, right? You need to just learn it and go do it, right? You have to earn getting there. You can't just say it. You like actually have to go do it and demonstrate it.
Yeah.
And I think where the whole world is a little soft of like, oh, I don't want to hurt feelings and this and that. It's like, no, like we need to your point, we need to have this culture that continues to evolve, and it's going to take all parties, right? All parties have to be involved in what that will be. All parties need to be open to making something that it is what they want. And I sit here from, I don't want to say a place of privilege, but maybe a place of psychotic decisions. We work for ourselves and have our own little micro company. And so culture is, exacerbated because you live and die by the people who are part of your thing, right? You can't, if the culture is not great, you fail. Whereas if you're giant corp, right, you have all these microcosms of culture throughout everything, and they can fall on their face and still succeed because they're this giant behemoth that just prints money. But arguably they're the two, they share all the same things, and it's important in all the ways. So God, it just sounds depressing.
Yeah. And it brings me right back to what I said in the start of there are just so many facets of culture that are in the middle of change right now. And I think it's just amplifying it, how much these different facets overlap, because you have so much workplace culture changing at the big corporation scale, because you have people really seeing right now how much power and money large corporations have and asking them to do more with that. But then conversely, you fall back into this, double-edged sword with microsegmentation. And you see a lot of people wanting to be entrepreneurs or wanting to work for a smaller business where they feel that they can actually see the impact that they have on an organization. But then you have some people who just want to write an email. All they want is the email job where they're the order taker and they send things through. You compound that with a technological shift that's not happening just in people's professional lives, but their personal lives. Then you put that on top of the pandemic is over, but it still is felt right now. And we're still sorting out how we're going to move forward with culture post-pandemic. You've got so much happening with social media and culture right now. And so I really think we're experiencing a huge flare-up just on all of these fronts. And I will be really interested to see kind of what happens when the dust settles in the next year or two here, and where we're at with community building and workplaces and in-person engagements and everything.
Well, I'll say, for those who want to power tip, pro tip, I think the people who are getting out and getting involved, I think that will pay dividends for them in the years to come, because such a small percentage in the macro is really doing it. that if you really want to stand out, just get the fuck out. Like, just go get involved. And it's like, it seems so obvious to say it. And I've been, that same sentiment was true before, except that there were, a decade ago, there were more people that were stepping out.
Yeah.
And today there's not as many. So you have a disproportional advantage to stand out even more and meet the folks that are there. And that will pay dividends. I know that it might be hard for some people to hear, but it is a human hack that will exist. And I guarantee you're going to see, as this workplace evolves, I guarantee you're going to see people like Gen X folks who kids has gone off to college or are out of the house going to go, I don't care if I go work in the workplace. Like, it's fine. I enjoy seeing people. I don't need to be at home.
Yeah.
There's going to be those people who are like, it's cool. Like, I don't, whatever. So.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to do it. You just got to get out there.
Yeah. Yes. We should wrap because we've been chatting for a while. I see. I'm going to go through some of these comments here.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to Ross. Critical thinking seems to be a lost art. Yep. I don't think AI helps that matters any.
No, it does not. And that's where media literacy is going to be really important in coming years. Is critical thought goes hand in hand with media literacy and thinking through the fact of, this robot answer seems a little bit funny, or this seems way too tailored to my specific tastes. What's going on under the hood there?
I think of quality versus quantity and getting things done. There's a lot of just get it done and get it out and deal with it later. And I wonder, how much does that problem get perpetuated in this world of AI? I don't know. Undivided Attention is an interesting podcast on humanity and technology. Yeah. The problem is that you wouldn't have anybody's attention on that podcast. They'd be off doing other things.
Yeah, that is the thing, isn't it?
I mean, look, the swipe, the attention span of folks today is really difficult.
It's plummeting. I use TikTok way too much. One, because it's fun and it fills me with dopamine in about 10 seconds. But two, it's really interesting through the cultural studies lens to just see all of the different ways you can get culture. And I regularly think about how much my own personal attention span has just gone down the drain the more I use TikTok. Like, if I were a math and graph person, you could absolutely draw a graph that shows the correlation of Emily's TikTok usage going up and her attention span going straight down. It's shocking, quite frankly.
To you, it's funny you mentioned, you made me think of like my pop culture for me back in the day was things like MTV and magazines. I can't even remember, Vogue, whatever.
Yeah.
And so like we would argue about heavy metal and gangster rap and Photoshop, pictures of people being augmenting themselves. Today we have, TikTok and Snapchat and filters and the things that come along with that. I've often, as somebody who has two kids who are two teenagers, I sit there and I get mad at social media, and then I recognize that it is it's also kind of their place in life. And it's not going away. There's a lot to be learned from it. Well, like anything in technology, we'll look back and we'll go, well, that's fucked up, or that should have been different. It's all to say, I sit there and I go to TikTok and I watch and I see what's going on and I try to evaluate, study, and I do that at TikTok and I do that in other said platforms. And I'm just fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by what sticks, what really resonates, the amount of incorrect information that gets twisted, and yet information that's really good. A good friend of mine who was speaking at that conference in Texas is from Germany in January. There was a lot of us Americans getting pushed, the protests in Germany with the farmers and all of this stuff, right? And from our lens, it looked like the world was falling down. But then you talk to somebody in Germany and they're like, oh no, like this shit happens. Like it's common. Like they actually have to schedule a protest and like everybody knew it was happening. Like it's no big deal. And you're like, right? Like back to critical thinking, like you have to take all of those inputs and you really have to go, what's the motive here? How was it sold? Was it likes or clicks, views? Is there a political motive behind it? Like it's just fascinating shit.
It is. Yeah. So I'll give you my hot tip to parents that I tell everybody who talks about worrying about their kids on the internet is something it was a radical perspective shift for me. I want to say mid 2023. And I was doing a lot of just kind of looking at how we're teaching internet safety in general and how that is received on the end of actual children in these classrooms. And somebody, interestingly enough, a social media reel, said something because they were asked to make a comment about, I don't know if you heard this, but last year, Gen Alpha kids, especially young girls, were going nuts with skincare in Sephora's and Ulta's and just buying it up and using it with no understanding of what any of these products did, why they were being, pushed to them, any of that. And this person said, for a generation that is so readily consuming content, creating content, engaging with content, wanting to be part of it, we're doing a lot of talking about them and not to them about this content. And that they went on to say more about how they had yet to see anybody, because this person was a skincare and beauty creator of their own for adults, targeted for adults, with adult money to do adult things for their own, whatever they want to do. And they said, I have yet to see anybody ask their child or speak to their child in terms to say, why do you want this? What is attractive about this content? What makes you feel like you need this? What's going on there? Tell me about that. Instead, it's a lot of should. You shouldn't watch this. You shouldn't need this. You shouldn't feel like you have to give in. And so that's just a really interesting perspective shift, at least for me, to go, you're so right. Like there is so much being said about these kids and about how they engage with content. And so rarely I see people saying, hey, why? Why do you do this? Why do you like this? Why? And what happens when you like it? Did you buy retinol at 10 years old and use it and now your skin's breaking out? Well, hey, let's talk about that.
We ask why a lot in this house. Probably more so to my daughter and some of the content and feelings that she has. My son is a little bit more matter of fact and can kind of brush it off and not really give a shit. but I see a lot of teenage girl post picture, get lots of accolades, and I say, why? What are we feeding here? Are we not comfortable with the way we look? Are we not comfortable with the way we dress? Like, why are we doing that? Because the majority of the comments are like, they're just bullshit. It's like all the same thing. Like, could you even pick these people out in a crowd? Are you feeling good by these affirmations that have been made by complete strangers? And do you understand like the flip side of that? Like what else is coming as a result of just, I don't want to say putting it out there, but for every yin, there's a yang. So some bad shit somewhere is coming as a result of it. And so it is a thing that we do here. Not that I'm patting myself on the back.
I should say I wasn't trying to say you don't.
No. It's a hard thing because then it comes just like, oh, well, there's judgment and this and that, and you don't know this person. That's like, I'm just asking why. I am just curious as to why that thing is happening and why that individual is doing that. I could care less about any of the other shit. I just find it fascinating.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, I find it fascinating that you are consuming it. Like there's two sides, right? One, putting it out there, and two, the other person who's so into consuming that back to that parasocial relationship of like, somebody so well, but in fact, you could never pick them out in a crowd. And it's crazy. It's crazy to me.
It is. It's a crazy world we live in. And it's all driven by technology, which is why we should all be doing more to get out in person and talk about it together and engage more and
yet
work through it all.
Here we are online talking to one another through
right
the internet.
Here we are in two completely different states.
Yes, you're using AI to blur your background and all the things. Like it's all working.
Yeah.
All right, Emily, it's been a fantastic chat. Lydia, Ben, Anthony, Ross, Danny, nice to see you pop in. Who else is in here? Adam, Tegan, Natalie, Don. I know Keith Casey was in there somewhere. All nice to see you. Emily, thank you for making the time. This is your first live stream, was it not?
It is. This is my first time doing anything like this. So.
Hey, you are now a seasoned professional.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm looking forward to meeting in person at that conference. So for those who are coming, you can see Emily in all of her glory.
I will be there. And I do love a good conversation. So I'm always happy to be the icebreaker of the day for somebody.
All right. Well, let's close with, what would be your top icebreaker?
My top it's an unconventional one, but it's a high success rate. And that is, you make the other person pull out their phone and show you what they were most recently listening to on their listening service of choice. So for me, it's Spotify. For some people, it's Apple Music. But you've always got to show your own. You've got to be good natured. You can't make just the other person do it. But I love it. It gets you talking. It shows unique interest. Honestly, when there's not a shared interest, like somebody's like, oh God, I hate that artist. Still a great icebreaker because you get in the conversation of, well, what do you like if you don't like that?
This is one of those areas where I have fallen victim to the AIs, to the robots, because I like to let the robots just like play music. I love that.
And there's a conversation piece for it. You can pull it up and be like, God, I don't know, because the robot picked it. Versus like my best friend, they don't ever use the Spotify like made anything. And so my best friend would be like, oh, I've curated exactly what I was just listening to an hour ago. And I fall in the middle. I'm either in a really specific mood at that time, or I had no idea what the hell I wanted to listen to. And I said, Spotify, you pick. So there you go.
And as Tegan says, If only the robots could get a little better at it. And that is right, because this morning's listening choices were not great for me. But
yeah, Spotify's working on it. They're working on their recommendation systems.
they're always working. Everybody's working on it.
Yeah.
All right. To those online, thank you for your time today. I don't know when the next one of these will be, but there will be one sometime. So stay on the lookout.